Welcome into episode 228. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast by KSN at gmail.com. As you might be able to tell from the sound of my voice, I'm battling what I think is a head cold. Why do they call it a head cold? I don't know. We're not going to get into
It's
that right
so
now.
funny. I was waiting
Um,
for you. I was already thought I was like, I'm gonna ask him what a head cold is because I don't know what the difference is between that and a cold. But okay, so
I
on
don't
the
know.
same
Is that
page.
not a thing you've heard? Like people don't say that
I've
around
heard
you?
the phrase. I've just
Yeah.
always felt I had a cold. I don't know if there's a type of cold that is not a head cold.
I think it's just I don't know. Well, see, this is what I was trying to do. I said I don't want to get into that now, and then we immediately got into it.
Is a
But
head cold the one where I know there's some cold expert, if that's a thing, listening to this who's really
I think
upset.
just doctors
Is
are like
a no, it's a
cold
cold expert,
expert.
Bailey. Is a head cold the one where it's like when you go to lie down, you feel that immense pressure on your head that's really uncomfortable? Is that a head cold? You know what I'm talking about?
Probably. I was thinking, and now that we're getting just fully get into this, when we're here to preview the biggest home game in quite some time. Um, I think maybe it's just the fact that it's like kind of like pressure in my head and like no nasal stuff and like a sore throat, and there's like no like I don't have like body chill. I don't know if body chills are part of normal colds, but I don't know. I think it's just all of my issues right now are confined to here, which isn't really a difference from a normal day. So,
Right.
yeah, I think I'm glad we went there. But we're here to preview UCF Colorado, which has become it was already going to be big. Colorado's drawing big numbers: Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, all that. But UCF will also be hosting Big Noon Kickoff on Fox from 10 a.m. to noon at Memory Mall. That's a big deal. It feels like less of a big deal than when game day came in 2018 just because game day is such an established thing. But it's still cool. It's a national pregame show on UCS campus leading into a 3:30 kickoff against Colorado. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's not as big as game day. I think we know that. The one downside of it has been I was just telling you about how if you're listening to this and you're a member of UCF Facebook, you've probably seen this, but all of UCF Facebook in particular is excited fans saying we got big noon kickoff and 8 people replying going no, the game is at 3:30. So that's already become a problem there. But no,
It's a
it's a
bad
big
name.
deal. I mean, big noon has come into its own as one of the pregame shows over the last few years. They obviously don't do the numbers game day does, but they've become a legit competitor, especially over the last 3-4 years. I think part of that is game days come down to earth a little bit. I don't think game day is quite as big as it maybe was 5-10 years ago, but
Mm.
it's just added to what already was going to be a showcase opportunity for UCF. I mean, we're suddenly looking a just the general mood of the fan base. This feels like the most hyped the fan base has been for a game in a while. I can't think of a post-COVID era game that the fans have been this excited for. And now you have this situation on Saturday where you're going to host Big Noon Kickoff, which is a huge showcase opportunity for your campus, for your brand, for your university. Then you're going to be on Fox at 3:30 facing Colorado, which means there's going to be millions of people watching, and you have an opportunity to show them a sold out crowd in your great atmosphere stadium and hopefully beat Colorado. And it's just there's no illusions around the fact this is all for Colorado. Like let's be real. Big Noon
Mm-hmm.
Kickoff is here for Colorado. I think everyone understands that, but this is still just such a huge opportunity for UCF to sell themselves and announce themselves to the nation and all that great stuff.
Yeah, and if you don't understand that it's all about Colorado, their fans on Twitter will remind you of that every time
They will.
UCF posts anything, and it's gotten really annoying already.
And if they do that, just
So
remind them of their complete and utter lack of success at any point in the last 25 years. Easy.
no, that's the funny thing is that I saw some fighting back and forth. There's this one account in particular that was like pointing out all of Colorado's like historical success or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I mean your school's like been around since like the 1800s, so I don't know what we're doing here,
They
but
quite literally have done, I mean, they are thrilled about the excitement around the game. And Dion's been probably a net gain for college football, a net positive just because of all the attention he's brought. But Colorado, leading into them hiring Dion, I think by any measurement you want to use, was one of the three worst Power Five programs in all of college football this century. It's like Kansas and maybe Arizona were below them. And that's like kind of the list. Vanderbilt
they
probably
for,
too.
they forget they were 1-11 2 years ago,
Yeah, they're
and
not good.
their big success last year with Dion was getting up to 4-8, which I mean, yeah, it's an improvement, and it was just it's a lot of it has been so much the national spotlight, but they haven't done anything with it other than they've off to a good start this year. This game this past Saturday against Baylor was an all time finish. That was fun, but
So
yeah, it's just that
here's the thing. Here's the thing
they've been
about
they've got an inflated ego very quickly.
here's the thing about their inflated ego is this is so bad because Colorado fans are like rabid and will find this. But The thing you have to
Don't
understand is
care.
I'm going to bring up a debate that you and I used to have when we were in college. It's the LeBron debate. Is you would always
Hmm.
be baffled because I was repeatedly adamant. This was never like a scenario that was going to happen. It was just like a conversation that I would never like back 5, 10 years ago. I would never have wanted LeBron James to play for the Magic, and you would always be like, because I'm a big Magic fan. You'd always say that's crazy. And my argument was because wherever LeBron is, it's like what the team accomplished doesn't matter. It's like not even the team's success. It's just LeBron's success, and I don't like the idea of the team being totally secondary. And that's what Colorado and Dion is. No one's watching this for Colorado or for something they did 40 years ago. This is the Dion effect. I mean, that's what people watch for. I think a lot of these Colorado fans, in quotes, are really Dion fans who don't have any ties to Colorado. And when he moves on, whether that's in 1 year or 3 years or whatever, Colorado will go back to being absolutely nothing. So
Yeah.
they can have their moment. But no, I don't think anyone thinks of Colorado as a brand. Dion's the
Do
brand.
you do you remember the follow up to that debate though? Because then I lived it when Tom Brady signed with the Bucks,
That's right. And
and
that whole
they won a Super
time
Bowl immediately.
you were very happy with it, and I was like, and I still think that that was a cheapened Super Bowl. Like that wasn't a Bucks Super Bowl; it was a Tom Brady
It
Super
sure
Bowl.
was.
And
Their
honestly, what made
defense
it
won them
even
the Super Bowl.
worse was that the Bucks immediately went back to being nothing when he left. So it's just like you were just Tom Brady's vessel. It wasn't like the Bucks actually achieved that. I know
We don't
there's
have to get
probably
into
the
that.
math probably says that a good amount of our listeners are Bucks fans, and I think they all hate me now that I've said that.
Well, we
But
don't have to get into that, but they've also we don't have to get into it because
I
they
haven't heard a
haven't
word
just
as a
fallen
casual
back
NFL
off.
fan. I have never heard one word about the Bucks since he left. They've never even entered my sphere, and I live in the state of Florida.
Well, that's fine, but you're also not an NFL fan.
I'm not.
So the fact that they still won the division last year, even though it's a bad division,
Yeah,
and won a playoff game and
Bucks,
came a win away from the NFC Championship game, it's
awful
they're still
franchise.
doing fine.
Can't do anything
Um,
of note.
all
I'm,
right.
I'm just trying to put your buttons now.
Yeah. So we say all of that to say this is a game that's going to have a ton of eyes on it. Ton of recruits are going to be there for UCF. I didn't see this like as a thing until last week because USF announced it for the Miami game. I didn't know like schools announced when they're like out of recruit tickets or something like that. Like we
Yeah,
have no recruiting spots left.
really funny you said that because I had also never seen that until USF did it last week, and then UCF today announced we've sold out of our
Yeah.
recruiting tickets. I don't know if that's like a new trend that's been invented. I had never seen that before last week, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're supposed to read into that too much, but UCF's kind of giving off the vibe that they think they're going to win this game. They're kind of taking some gambles, some of these visits. I mean, they've basically invited and tried to get on campus like every major recruit left in this class and some for next class too. And that's a risk to take because, and I think it's not just the opponent. It's not just, oh, I think UCF thinks they're going to beat Colorado. They know they're going to have a great crowd for this game. They're hosting Big Noon. This is a big event. So it's not like
Yeah.
whether UCF wins or not, it's still a big showcase for yourself, but that's just, a lot of eggs in one basket to bring all them on campus for once for a game that you kind of have to win now.
Yeah, and I guess just I mean, the word counter is the right that, but like I think it is just going to be their biggest home game of the year. So
Yeah.
why not? Why not do
Well,
it and
I'll be
show them?
curious because, and we're a bazillion light years from this being a thing. But if UCF goes on to have the season we're hoping they're going to have, they beat Colorado, they continue to do well. If that Utah game is Big 12 title implications, I suspect that one will be bigger. But yeah, this game
That's true.
is. It is very weird that, and maybe I'll feel differently next week, but it is very weird that as of right now, this feels bigger than the Florida game, which is kind of nuts. I think more hype is on this.
Yeah, and because of the national impact, because the Florida there, I think there will be. I mean, yeah, it's going to be crazy next week. Like it'll kind of set in. I think that okay, UCF plays at the Swamp this week,
Right.
but nationally, like this being a 3:30 kick on Fox after Big Noon, like I think, yeah, I get that feeling. But yeah, it will change. It will quickly change on like Sunday when everyone's like, oh, it's Florida week.
Yeah, you're
But
probably right.
okay,
I'm probably living a little too in the moment with that one, but well, part of it is because, and we'll get in this later, but like the Florida game is now on the SEC network. We're still sort of
yeah,
waiting to see if Napier's going to be there. It's just that game has gone from that's a regional game at this point. That's huge for UCF, but the general college football audience doesn't really care about that one. This game, like every Colorado game, a lot of people talking about this one. The Big Fox game between undefeated UCF and 3-1 Colorado. A lot of eyeballs.
yeah, and I think we can go ahead and just. I guess we've kind of already started previewing this. We can get into our formal preview of it, but part of it, I think, is like as much as it says about Colorado, everyone knows what Colorado has been so far, and they're probably waiting for. And I don't know, I'm not going to say this would be their big signature win of the Dion era, but it would, I think, legitimize them to a point where it's like, okay, they might actually be contending this year in the Big 12. I'm not sure they will in the long run, but they're off to a 3-1 start. They survived Baylor last week, and if they can come into the bounce house when all of this is going on and win the game. It's a big game for them too, as much as they try to say, they're everyone's Super Bowl. I think like they have to go out there and, win some big games themselves. So it's gonna be crazy. I'm part dreading it. I'm part really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I said to you earlier today, it's I can't remember the last time that I was having like pre-game jitters the Tuesday before the game when we were recording. Because last year, the losing streak just killed a lot of that. But almost all of last year, it was just kind of like, we'll see what happens. It was just kind of
Mm-hmm.
ride with what happens. There weren't giant expectations. And even going back to 2022, the games they lost weren't the ones I was worried about. So it's been a while since I'm sitting here 5 days out from the game, like, oh man, I just kind of want this to get here and have it happen so we can move past it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious because it's a big game for Colorado in the sense that they win this game and they've matched their win total from last year. Like you said, they're trying to legitimize themselves as a power in the Big 12 or someone who can win the conference, even though I think pretty much everyone understands that's probably not in the cards for them with how deep the league is. But I don't know. We saw it with TCU, and I think we're going to keep seeing it this year. I think that a lot of the other fan bases, especially the Pac-12 ones, kind of just see UCF as a G5 school still. I mean, you look at Colorado's upcoming schedule, their next two games are Kansas State and Arizona. I don't know if this is a big game for them. It's an important game, but they're all important. I don't know if this one has any added anything for them. And it's like, as far as the game being on Fox, it's there this year. They've played on ESPN, NBC, CBS, and Fox for their 4 games. It's like, yeah, they're always going
Yeah.
to be on a national network. That's an advantage for UCF in my opinion. That this is a biggest home game of the season for UCF, big showcase game with Big Noon, and for Colorado, I don't know if this is a game that they're going to be extra up for.
Yeah, man, it's a good point that you make about their upcoming schedule because it's kind of you hope that UCF, and I don't think with all of the added implications of this, UCF won't fall into the trap of like, oh, they play Florida next week. But maybe Colorado does a little bit in the fact
Right.
that they've got those two big games coming up and they're coming off of a dramatic emotional win, at home against Baylor. Which I mean, we don't have to talk about that game, but like the fact, like that was in one of the
Oh
more
my
insane
God.
finishes I've seen in a while with the Hail Mary to send it to overtime and then the touchdown and then Travis Hunter punches the ball out as Baylor's about to tie it up. It was a crazy game, and it's them escaping and winning that game is I think why Big Noon ended up happening.
Yeah. Because it's a
And
3
why
and 0 team versus
3:30,
a 3-1 team. It gave you the
yeah,
opportunity to build this as a big matchup.
yeah, not 3-0 versus 2-2 and 0-1 in the conference. So yeah, I mean
Right.
that ended up being a net positive for UCF. So we'll see how this all goes. But as
Just
far as
really, really quickly on that note
yeah, go ahead.
about the game they just played is the it's we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the it's funny how we are 2 weeks into, really not even, we're like a week into conference play, and the whole pitch of this 16 team Big 12 was it's going to be crazy every week and there will be crazy games. It's 5 of 7 games, Big 12 games have been decided by one score already. And we've already had crazy games like UCF coming back from down 28-7 at TCU. We've had Colorado with the incredible Hail Mary to go overtime beat Baylor. It's like this conference is nuts. And I love that for the people who aren't fans of these teams because it's just fun to watch those games on TV. I think I hate it for us because I'm
Oh
realizing that I
yeah,
think this is just what things are going to be like in this conference. I feel like UCF's going to be playing a lot of close games, and that's going to be hell on my well being.
it really will be like this. I think every week, and we've talked about that a little bit last year, where it's just like this is what this league is, and it's why if UCF wins on Saturday and they do go into the swamp and beat Florida and they're 5-0. I'm still going to be like, well, they could collapse late in the season because every game from here on out is going to be a tough one. So it's one of those things where it's like I don't think I'll ever get comfortable, unless maybe I don't know if they're 9-0 and it's like okay maybe they can afford to lose one game down the stretch here, but they can't.
But
It'd be you don't want to put yourself in that position. So it's like every week I'm just gonna be like this could be the
yeah,
week they lose and I'm gonna be really upset about it.
and part of the problem is the easy games are kind of going away. Cincinnati's has a pulse. BYU was ranked. BYU was like one
Yeah,
of 2 games that we were like, oh, well, that's one that will win. They're ranked. They destroyed Kansas State, and now they're 4-0 or 3-0. It's like, yeah, it'd be so cool if UCF started 5-0. I'm rooting for it. I think it is. It's crazy that feels legitimately possible. They really can do it, but it's just there's no way they get through the season 11-1 or something like that. Like I think we
yeah.
just need to be ready for that now. No one in this conference is getting out without getting beat up on.
Yeah. But as far as for what else is at stake in this one, I mean, other than the national spotlight and all that, it's like you have a lot of momentum. I know maybe I don't know if it feels like it'll die off because they had the bye week, but there's a lot of momentum coming off of a big comeback win at TCU to start conference play, and then you've got the game at Florida coming up. this being in the middle of it, it's like, all right, either you win this game and the good vibes from that comeback like continue, and that being down 28-7 was a rallying point of the season, or if they come out and lose this game, that comeback is kind of a thing that just happened. Like, yeah, it's a great comeback, a great memory, but means nothing for, the landscape of the season. Um, and you want to build on it. I know it's like they can't come out and start the way they did against TCU and then expect to do that every week. So you kind of hope that, yeah, they figured some things out down the stretch in that game and can come out and play better from the jump here.
Yeah, and I want to say really quickly because if you're not following college football as a whole, TCU got beat up on by SMU this weekend in one of the weirder games we've seen. Sonny Dykes got ejected, which you like don't see in college football, and
Yeah.
some fans immediately freaked out from that and were like, "Oh my God, it's actually a red flag that went down the road and all that." I don't buy into that for a couple of reasons. The first one is I feel like we need to deprogram from the G5 mentality of when we were trying to hype up UCF of 6 degrees of separation. Well, this team beat that team and beat that team, and we beat them, so that means this. None of it means anything. It's college
Mm-hmm.
football. Weird stuff happens every weekend. None of it means anything. And the other thing I want to add on with that is, yeah, we talked about in our last podcast of, oh, I bet TCU, we might be looking back at them as a good team. That looks less likely now that SMU beat up on them. But at the same time, say that UCF, okay, they went on the road and went down 28-7 to a not very good team. Isn't coming back and winning anyway what you're supposed to do in those situations when you're playing a team
Yeah.
you're better than? Doesn't that still hype up UCF either way? I don't know. I'm not freaked out by the notion of, oh, that's now bad that they came back and won a game, you know?
No, and I think we've talked about on this podcast forever is that like college football is so week to week that it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
it's completely different. It's a completely different performance. It's like, yeah, it's the same team, the same, coach, all that stuff, but everything changes so fast. Where what was I listening to the other day where I was talking about like Kansas State being one of the big powers in the Big 12. It was like a preview from last week, and then they go on the road at BYU and just fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I still think Kansas State's a good team, but it is all so week to week. Like now, all of a sudden, TCU doesn't have a good offense. I mean, they still scored however many points they scored in that game. They just gave up 66.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not looking at that as like, oh, maybe UCF is bad. I think I could say maybe UCF is bad just based off the fact that we just have that one game sample size, not the fact that they went down to a team that ultimately ended up losing to the SMU.
And you see that in
It's
that the few times that teams do play twice in the same season, it's always like wildly different results. Like when two teams play twice, the first time one team wins narrowly by 3 points, and they play again, and the team that lost wins by 30. It's just,
mhm.
and it's also I feel like people forget it's like we really lock in college football results and then inform everything we think of a team because of that. This TCU game, SMU returned a punt for a touchdown early on and put TCU in a hole. Then TCU had this weird, they fumbled but didn't think they fumbled, so they didn't react as SMU picked up and ran the ball in for a touchdown. They're suddenly in a hole. Their game plan's out the window, things unravel. It's like it's just random stuff happens in games that totally changes how they play out. I really hope fans. It's like I know that it's like we work with what we have and we want to define teams by what we've seen, but it's like games are just random.
Yeah.
It's very hard to. It's like you play the same game 100 times, you're going to get 100 wildly different results. It's really hard to just nail things down that way.
Yeah, and a couple more things just on the front of like what's at stake. There are very like I don't want to say minor, but there are Big 12 stakes and that it's a Big 12 conference game, but we're still so early into the season. And as we just mentioned, there's no team in this conference that's going to get through everything unscathed. So yeah, I mean, while you want to bank Big 12 wins whenever you can get them, like losing this game doesn't take you out of the title race. Winning it doesn't, make you the favorite. It's just kind of, yeah, it'd be nice to be 2-0 in conference play and be one of those teams leading the way. But it's such a week to week thing. Like it's more, and we've talked about it like comparing it to the AAC, where it's like, okay, yeah, every once in a while, like, you got the Cincinnati game that you get up for, but like, all right, the next week you play Temple or you play ECU, whatever. This week, with this week and just every week going forward and the rest of the season, it is a week by week, like, yeah, we got to, this game is going to test UCF in this way. It's going to test UCF in this way. It's so much more difficult. And that's why it's like, it's what you do as a sports fan where you just live and die by every result, but it's like it's impossible to train yourself not to do that.
Right.
But you in a perfect world you could, because this season is going to be there will be downs, there will be ups and downs. And so as far as Big 12 stakes, it's not like make or break, but it's big.
Yeah, I want to push back on all of that a little bit.
Okay.
Let's just make this a full-on contentious podcast. Let's make it like it's Sports Center and just start screaming at each other.
Yeah.
I think that the stakes is I don't buy into the if they lose, well, they were going to lose eventually, because if your goal is to try to win the Big 12, which we still don't, we know it's UCF's goal. We still don't totally know if they have that kind of team, but through 3 games, it's looking possible. That Yeah, you're going to drop Big 12 games. You can't drop a Big 12 game at home to a team that you're presumably better than, and you're a 14-point favorite over. It's like you can drop at Iowa State and you expect that. You can drop
Yeah,
Utah and expect that. You can't drop the home games against the inferior teams like Colorado or Cincinnati, maybe BYU. I don't know. They might be really good. It's like those are the ones that if you want to have that kind of season, you can't drop those now. Like, yes, you will lose conference games. They can't be these conference games, or else it's like, I don't know. I just think that things get off the rails
that's
quickly.
that is fair because I think from the very literal standpoint, no, it doesn't impact the conference standings. Like it's not going to break your season, but it's kind of what we all talked and not even I would say joked, but not even necessarily joked about when part of it was through the Twitter space with the Kingdom and JP Gilbert. It was like TCU, if they lose at TCU, like that's the game where the whole season rides on it, because if they lose at TCU, yeah, they're definitely going to drop some more games. So you do feel like you can't beat Colorado at home in this environment and against a team that outside of a couple areas you should be better than, then yeah, it probably does mean you're going to lose a couple games down the road. So from that standpoint, yeah, you're actually probably right. But
Yeah. Here's a stat really quickly that means nothing.
okay.
In UCF's 10 years in the AAC, when they started 2-0 in conference play, they either played for or won the conference. When they didn't start 2-0 in conference play, they didn't. And that was every year in the AAC.
All right. Yeah.
Means nothing.
Great.
So
No,
literally don't do anything with that, because guess what? There ain't a
I
whole bunch
won't.
of Temples and Tulsas coming, but it's still interesting. 2-0. Interesting.
Yeah. Last thing I want to talk about here as far as what's at stake, and kind of you're better at kind of gauging this kind of stuff than I am. If they win this game, do you think they're ranked
No,
going
I
into
don't
12?
think so.
No?
I don't think so. They have 3 votes right now. It would be very hard to jump from 3 votes to rank. That's not to say they can't, because this will be a game with a lot of eyeballs, and this is going to sound extra dumb, but I feel like they'd have a better chance at getting ranked if it's close. I feel like if UCF just blew them
Hmm.
out, people tune out, and that's that. I don't know. Other teams have to lose near the bottom of the poll, and it's hard to go from 3 votes to ranked. I think they'd be on like the precipice of it, but I'd love to
Right.
be wrong. Going and ranked to the swamp sounds fun. I'd be down for that, but it's a high mountain to
Feel
climb.
I see. I don't know how many times the team has gone from that few votes to ranked the next week, but it's like you think of, and this is a different situation because what was it? Northern Illinois beat number, was it 8, 7 Notre Dame?
Yep.
But like them they jumped into the rankings after that, and
Yeah,
I
I was
almost
literally
wonder
about
if
to bring that up when you said I don't know if it happens. I'm like, it happened earlier this year. It's just
yeah.
it's
So I
it
want to say like I don't know if Colorado has that because they're obviously not ranked. It's not UCF beating a ranked Colorado, but Colorado has so much of that hype and pedigree just because it's Dion, because it's Shador and Travis Hunter, and it's on going to be on Fox at 3:30. That I wonder if I don't know, because if it's close, like you say, yeah, more people will watch it. But if they just blow the brakes off of them, are people going to say, wow, they just beat Colorado by 20?
yeah, I'm gonna take it back a little bit because I checked and BYU had 2 votes last week and got ranked because they beat up on Kansas State. So maybe I'll take it back. Maybe
But again, it
UCF
was a
can.
ranked Kansas State, so I don't know. It just depends on how they view Colorado.
It also
So
depends on who's gonna lose, because you got a bunch of teams near the bottom here who are supposed to win. So it's like that's the thing people forget too about when we get ranked. It's like people need to fall out like to open
yeah,
up spots. So I will put it at a watch. UCF is on getting ranked watch, not a warning,
okay.
just a watch.
All right, well
You like what
that's
I did since
timely.
we have a hurricane
That's
bearing
yeah,
down on the
that's
state to do a
timely.
little hurricane lingo?
Yeah. I was gonna see if we could get through the entire week without mentioning it, or through that entire podcast without mentioning it, but
Oh, I was
um,
planning to bring it up in depth for when we talk about matchups, so no worries. There was no
that's
chance.
fair. All right, let's do a little bit of the opposition preview with Colorado. As much as we've already talked about them, they're 3-1, 1-0 in the Big 12. They beat North Dakota State to start the season, lost at Nebraska by 18, beat Colorado State on the road, and then, as you mentioned, won in overtime against Baylor last week. Um, I don't know what to make of them, and this is one of those things that I'm trying not to fall into what is easy to say, but I'm probably going to say it anyway. There was a time, and I think it was, people are not going to care for this analogy or this comparison because most of you won't be able to relate to it. But there was a time when Harry Kane played for Tottenham, and I think it was Pep Guardiola from Man City would say, they would just call them the Harry Kane team because he was just responsible for everything they did, win or lose. And this feels like it is the Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter team because
Yes.
those two guys, it starts and ends with them. Like they've got good players elsewhere, but these are the two guys that are going to beat you if you're going to lose.
We've really never ever seen anything like this in college football because it's so hard to assemble a roster that is largely meh, like it's just fine to bad. And then they also have two of the top 10 players in the sport. Probably the best
Mhm.
player in the sport in Travis Hunter. I have never in 150 years of college football, a roster has never been assembled like that because that's not the way it works. It's the top players in the country go to the powerhouses, and the ones who aren't the top players in the country don't. You don't see a team that has mostly players that aren't overly good and then two of the best. It's just very, very, very weird. And that's part of why they're so unpredictable. It's because there's times
Mhm.
where, you can't win 10 games with only two great players, but you can win some games you're not supposed to when those two great players are going off, especially when one of them is kind of more like two great players on his own, since Travis Hunter's a
Yeah.
great defender and a great receiver. So it's a weird, weird roster.
Who, yeah, he's a great receiver and defender, and I just don't know. I still don't know how he physically does it. I mean, I understand he's in great shape, but not everybody does that. Like, no
If
one does
Colorado
that.
goes to a bowl, he should win the Heisman. I know that like we have this rule that the Heisman has to be on like a really good team, except last year when they gave it to like a meh LSU teams. Maybe they're teeing themselves up for this, but he's incredible. Like I don't know how there's an argument for anyone being better at college football than he is. I really don't
Yeah, he's two very good players. Like, it's just
know.
crazy to say that. Like, he is two very good players. So Shador, obviously Deion's son, 67.9% completion rate so far, 1,340 yards, 11 touchdowns, two interceptions. Um, there's stuff I don't want to say, and there's stuff I do want to say, but I
Go
don't really
ahead.
know.
Go ahead.
It just so much of this, and it's so much of it is about Deion Sanders. That's we've talked about that being Colorado. So much of it is about Shador, I think, by design too. Like they don't run the ball that much, they don't run the ball that well, but it is a very good showcase for Shador Sanders to put up numbers like that through 4 games,
Yeah.
and he's positioning himself to be one of the top guys in the NFL draft next year. And I'm not saying that's what it's all about because I do think that Deion has proven, at that certain levels where he does care for his players while they're there. He might take some shots at them if they leave, but it's so much of this team is about Shador, and which is yeah, it's the quarterback, so that's part of it. It's the quarterback, but so much of what they do on offense is geared around the quarterback, which again makes sense. One of the best players on offense, yeah, but they just throw the ball so much
Yeah.
that you're like, all right, you're gonna have to be prepared to probably defend 45 to 50 passes.
When you're playing a team who their leading rusher through 4 games has 87 yards, you get the vibe that they're planning to throw the ball a lot. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you, I'm feeling mostly confident about UCF's ability to win this game because I think UCF is a flat out better team based on what we know. We might learn new things on Saturday. But man, where I get scared is we just came off a game at TCU where UCF was effective in a lot of ways, but just couldn't deal with one strong connection from a quarterback to a receiver. They just couldn't deal with. And that's like the last thing you want to see happen before you're facing Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, I don't know if UCF can contain them. I really don't. And I think that it's hard to win a game when you're that one dimensional if that's all they can do. But man, we saw TCU almost freaking win a game doing just that. So I mean, TCU basically just did not run the ball and just threw over and over, and UCF secondary couldn't really deal with it. So that if you want to pick how UCF loses, that's how they lose. Is that?
Yeah. And I think too the secondary concerns me a lot just because of what we saw, and so much of it was the quick passing game against TCU, the underneath stuff, and they just marched down the field really easily. And as much as Travis Hunter is that guy at receiver, they've got some other pretty good receivers. Like Jimmy Horn Jr. is a good receiver. His numbers aren't as great this year as they have been in the past, but 18 catches, 286 yards, and a touchdown.
He's
A
very
lot of
good.
that came, I think, in week one. LaJohntay Wester is another one who I think he's the one who caught the Hail Mary to go to overtime with Baylor. He has 18 catches for 226 yards and 4 touchdowns. So it's just for me, we don't know enough because we've just seen them play TCU. But does UCF have enough guys in the secondary to contend with that level of talent at wide receiver? I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe not. That would be bad. But I think the other factor at play here too is yes, it's on the secondary, and we'll see if they can fix some of the problems that we saw last week. I'm hopeful they can. But it's what we talked about from TCU too is the D line not getting pressure. And I do
Yep.
wonder how much of this is going to be on the D line to disrupt what Shador does, to force him
Most
out
of
of the
it.
pocket, to get him on the ground. I mean, is that it's almost like in my head, I'm like, what's the bigger difference maker? Is it the secondary performing well, or is it the D line pestering Shador?
I mean, if the secondary, plays out of this world, like that's going to obviously be a huge plus for UCF. But I think so much of it comes down to the trenches, but really on both sides of the ball. We haven't really talked about Colorado's defense much, but on offense, well, what we've seen, like Colorado's offensive line is not that good.
No,
They're not that physical. They're not that big. I don't think
no.
it's
And this is an
relative
issue for
still,
them
I guess,
every
but
week is whoever they're
yes.
playing ends up bullying their O-line just over and over.
But and as much as we came into the season saying UCF's D line is its strength, we haven't seen enough of that in the pass game. We've seen them stop the run really well, which is very different from last year. Well, not really, because for the D line last year, it was like we always said, if the D line gets to the running back, that's a great
Yeah.
play. If they get past the D line, linebackers aren't doing anything.
It's just
Secondary's not
now
tackling them.
the few times there is that hole, they're running into Deshaun Pace and not an open
Yeah,
field, so that's helping. But yeah,
yeah. So it's so much of it is going to be you have to disrupt Shador, and he's a guy who in the past has been sacked, several times a game. If he's being hit play after play after play, that's not easy to deal with as a quarterback. So
right.
it's so much of it's going to come down to that. I know it might sound like an obvious thing, but it's something we haven't seen UCF do a lot this year, though we've seen it happen a lot to Colorado's offensive line. So that's what you hope you can get out of your defense. Otherwise, this turns into a shootout.
Yeah. And this is a perfect time for me to bring up the hurricane. If you either live out of state or maybe just grossly misinformed, which would be unfortunate, there is a hurricane coming to Florida. Luckily for Orlando, it's heading more towards the Panhandle, and this is going to be it's looking like it's going to be a bad one, which is unfortunate, and we'll hope for the best there. But it's not supposed to impact the game in any way. It's supposed to come through on Thursday. Hurricanes are large and cover large swaths of territory, and even when it is passed by Saturday, as of now, the weather's showing that it's probably going to be a rainy day, which is unfortunate for Big Noon. And I'm hoping maybe the rain will be polite and wait until the afternoon so UCF can get a good crowd for that. But if this is a game where it is raining, I don't I wouldn't really want to put money on the team that can only throw the ball and can't run at all. If it's
Yeah.
raining. So you do wonder if weather is on UCF's side here, since obviously I know talk about UCF's offense, obviously running is something they're good at. And if Colorado's really only path to beating UCF, which I think it is just killing them through the air. If you can't do that effectively, your margin for error is not great.
Yeah, and I kind of think back a little bit, and it's a really weird example because they had, what people considered was the best running back in the conference last year. But when that rain came in against Oklahoma State, I'm just trying to think of how much trouble they had trying to throw the ball after that. Because
Yeah.
they were already down by a lot. So they're like, all right, we can't just completely run the ball. We're gonna have to throw it. And that's where you get receivers falling down, you get the quarterback slipping, you get just the ball slipping out of his hand. Like it could change so much. And I think you and I talked about that over text. It was just like, isn't it crazy that like if it pours down rain, I just feel like UCF's gonna win. Like that's just like the key to the game is like let's hope it rains. But I think there's more to it. Like I think they can still win if it doesn't rain, but it would
Yeah,
be a
I want to be
help.
clear. I'm not saying UCF is screwed if it doesn't rain. I think they
Yeah.
absolutely can win the game whether it rains or not. I just think that if I'm sitting in that press box, which of course I'm the one inside for the game, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hope it rains on you guys. But
Yeah.
and we see those raindrops start coming down, I'm probably just gonna be like, interesting.
It'd be really great for me personally because I'm, as I said at the top of the podcast, currently dealing with some kind of sickness. So it's like if I get through this enough to get to the game on Saturday and I just spend 3.5 hours in the pouring rain, like that'll be great for my health. But I hope it happens. Like I'll take it on the chin and hope that happens so
We're
we
gonna
can just
start doing those like clickbaity headlines for our podcast, and the next one is gonna be like Bailey Adams pneumonia in all caps.
It's just gonna be my face. They do the thumbnails on YouTube where it's like
Yeah.
the person like that's what we're gonna do. Yeah, that's a good idea. But all right, let's wrap up, I guess, this portion of the preview of Colorado and just kind of talk strengths and weaknesses. We talked about their strengths being the pass game, the fact that they have two of the best, players in college football, three of them if you count Travis Hunter as two. Um, Weaknesses, as we mentioned, they're not running the ball that well, and they're not stopping the run that well.
No.
No matter how much their fans on Twitter will try to tell you that's not the case. Like the numbers, and I know, yeah, you watch some of the games, how teams get the rushing yards sure matters. But you see people that are like, we've been really good against the run this year. Like someone tried to say they were the number 2 run defense, and someone was like, actually, you're number
I was
82.
gonna say
And
they're the number
they were
82
like,
run
they were
defense.
like, yeah, but that's just if you go by the numbers. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
That's
like
accurate.
sure.
That's usually how that works.
So
Um,
yeah, and they've struggled against running quarterbacks, which KJ could help him. We said that
he's
against
shown
TCU
that.
too, I think.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
shown that through 3 games that when there's a hole there, he is more than willing to take it. And he doesn't take it like
Yeah.
John Rhys Plumlee, where he's down the field in half a second and then ready to lower his shoulder into like a linebacker. But KJ is just the guy where there's a hole, he will gladly go trot for 6 yards. Like he's fine with
Yeah.
that. And he will take that if you give that to him. And yeah, it's like I said, is the way you pick to lose the game is, well, UCF just couldn't stop a great quarterback receiver combo. So how are they going to stop this one? The stat that you give to why they'll win the game is this is the nation's top rushing offense versus the number 82 run defense. And that's why I was laughing, because as you said, a lot of Colorado fans on Twitter today, their take has been, well, actually, when you look at our run numbers where if you remove quarterback runs, it's much better. The much better was like 4.8 yards a carry, which I don't know why
Yeah.
they think that's good. That's still bad.
Well,
And
it would have been good for UCS defense last year. I would have gladly allowed 4.8 yards of carry. I think they're probably allowing maybe 8,
I
but
just
go
love
ahead.
their brag being like, yeah, it's gonna take RJ Harvey 2 plays to pick up a first down. I'm like, okay. And like you said, on top of that, they have KJ either way who's going to run the ball effectively. I
Yeah.
just until someone shows that they can stop UCF from running the ball, I don't really think anyone can, because we've established that RJ Harvey is one of the best running backs in the country. We've established that when he needs a rest, they'll put out one of the other best running backs in the country, whether it's Miles Montgomery or Penny Boone or whatever. All these guys averaging 6, 7 yards a carry. And then they have KJ who can run his own right, and they have a strong O line. And it's just when you're up against a team that just has struggled across the board to find ways to stop the run, it's hard to imagine. I don't think this is going to be a game like kind of similar to TCU. I don't think KJ's going to have to throw the ball much. I think he'll have to throw enough to keep them honest. I mean, we have Deion
Mhm.
Sanders said today in his presser that
Yeah.
their
I was just
game
just
plan.
gonna read that quote.
You read it if you have it.
Yeah. He said, we got to load the box up and pray. I feel good about our scheme. I feel good about what I saw at practice today. I feel good about what we've been accomplishing against the run. So after, before saying how good he feels about the scheme and what he saw at practice, which I would imagine they're not doing a ton of, run stopping in practice. We got to load the box up and pray. So we'll see if
What
that how that goes.
when your run game is good to the point that a Power Four head coach is saying his strategy is to pray for the best. That means you're in a good spot. That does mean you're in a
Yeah,
good spot. So I don't think this could age so badly, and I'll knock on wood as I say it, but I can't. I can see a lot of different ways this game plays out. UCF failing to run the ball effectively. I just don't see how that could happen. I really don't.
I'll see it when I believe it. Really, whether it's this week or next week or whenever.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen a team be able to stop RJ Harvey in a long time, and I haven't seen this group of running backs and KJ being able to all do damage on the ground.
And I'm sure someone will eventually slow them. Like I understand that RJ is not going to put up 180 yards every single game, but I don't think anyone's ever going to
He
stop them.
might.
I mean, that's the thing. Like I don't think anyone's ever going to flat out stop them. Where
Yeah,
you have a game where RJ finishes with like 56 yards on like 3.8 yards per carry. I just don't see a game like that happening this year.
yeah. This is also, the same podcast where we said I don't think UCF really is built to come back from down 14-0, and then it happened that Saturday. So,
This is also the
you know,
podcast where last week when we were talking about the schedule ahead, I said BYU may be 3-0, but they're obviously have not looked good, and that's an easy win. And then they destroyed Kansas State. So again, this is the podcast that there's nothing like all of them, but
yeah.
what can you do?
So sticking with that kind of theme where, yeah, they're going to load the box up. I think they can load the box up as much as they want, and UCF might still have plenty of success on the ground
Yeah.
because I think UCF's offensive line will be able to be more physical than the defensive line. And RJ Harvey's just proven that he can bounce off tacklers and he can make a lot out of nothing plenty of times. But at the same time, yeah, KJ is going to have to be on. He's going to have to hit the throws that are there.
Yep.
And that's where you kind of get to the point where it's like, who, I mean, obviously he's going to still throw the ball to Kobe Hudson, but if they put Travis Hunter on Kobe Hudson,
Which is
you got
likely.
to have another receiver who is going to get the easy yards. Because I think at that point, everything Kobe gets will be difficult. He
Yeah.
makes plenty of contested catches, and he might make plenty more against Travis Hunter, but there's got to be somebody else to be able to catch the ball and move the chains when you need him to.
Kobe needs like 2 good catches with Travis on him. That's all that's standing between him and like a solid draft pick in the NFL
Yeah,
draft. Like you do that
yeah,
and you're set. And I think KJ, I think we are absolutely going to see him chuck it to Kobe more than a couple times. We'll see. But
yeah,
I do agree with you that it's just we're waiting to see kind of who wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 are. Like we were joking last week, wide receiver 2 is Randy Pittman apparently, but
yeah.
I just have this. I was so nervous about KJ after New Hampshire and really before New Hampshire and really after Sam Houston. I just have this trust in him after the TCU
Yeah.
game because I think he showed us all something in the second half of that game that when things got tough, that's when he settled in and made all the right plays through the entire second half. And really there was the overthrow to Kobe on the first
Mhm.
ball, kind of it for issues with him in that game.
Yeah.
And it's like the best quarterbacks in the world. Like Vince Young would overthrow receivers sometimes. It happens. I think it was just the fears we had going in amplified that. But I trust KJ. I trust him to be calm, and I don't think this is a game where we come out and say KJ Jefferson was the clear MVP. He put up 6 touchdowns and was incredible. I think this will be another game where KJ Jefferson just does what UCF needs him to do to win the game. That's what he showed against TCU he's willing to do.
Yeah, and I think it was a reminder too. And we talked about this a little bit after that. He's been here before. Like he's played in big games. He played in big environments. So like being on the road at TCU didn't really phase him. And I don't know if there really is going to be any environment that does phase him, considering what he's faced in the past. So I don't know. I think like the early on, like the New Hampshire performance was kind of jarring, but now you kind of when you saw what we saw at TCU, like kind of reminds you, oh yeah, like he played in the SEC and played at a pretty high level for a while. Like I
Right.
think he knows what he's doing. It was easy to forget that when he goes like was it in the first
Seven
game
and
it was like 7
14.
of 15 something like
It was
that? Yeah,
bad. It was. I mean, we
but
established it was statistically his actual worst game of his starting career.
yeah,
And again, to be clear, because we're jumping from that, he was perfectly fine against Sam Houston too. That game doesn't
yeah.
matter, so it's not like. But he was. It's not like he came out and sucked again. He was perfectly fine in that game.
Yeah, and like I say all this to say, like, I don't. Again, even if they load the box up, like UCF can't get away from running the ball. That's not what I don't think that's ever a thing that they like are going to try to do. Like, oh wait, actually we can't. They loaded the box up. We actually can't try to run the ball right at them. I think they'll do it anyway, but that's where you also need KJ. Like KJ doesn't need to be the focal point, like you said, but he has to do the things necessary to move the chains, like on a big third down, whatever it is. He's got to be on from the
I
jump. It
think
can't
it's
be
honestly
let's turn it on in the second half.
it's almost less KJ to me that he's got to be ready to do what he has to do. And it's like, can Townsend do what he has to do? Can
Yeah,
Whittemore or Jacoby Jones or Javarius Johnson? Like those are the guys where I'm like, some of you are gonna have to try to get open. And like
yeah.
that should be easier if Colorado's loading the box. So it's like that's what we need to see in those situations.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like, and we can go over to the defense now, I think, but we've talked plenty about it where Shador and Travis Hunter are so much of this attack, but so much is going to be on the defensive line. I also wonder, and it's where you kind of you have to be careful about it, but I wonder if they're going to blitz a little more this week just to try to
Yeah.
get him uncomfortable. But obviously, you got to get home, or else somebody's going to be open. Um, but it's teams that have beaten Colorado with ease, I think, have been the ones that really just made Shador uncomfortable and kind of rendered him ineffective because he's getting up off the ground after every throw.
Your strategy can't be let's let him sit there comfortable and we'll try to cover the guys downfield because you're not going to cover the guys downfield. You're not going to cover
Yeah.
Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and all these guys. You're not going to. So it's what you said is spot on. I don't just regurgitate what you're saying, but yeah, the teams that have success against Colorado are the teams that affect Shador. So I'm sure that's
Mm-hmm.
UCF strategy. I don't see them winning this game if it's just a bunch of 3-man rushes, no pressure, hope it works out. I don't see that. He needs to learn Lee Hunter, buddy. Like that's got to be in the cards here.
Yeah, you want this to turn into the kind of game where afterward Shador is blaming his offensive line, not having them all stand
Yes,
behind him during his press conference because
that is
there's
correct.
two sides of that coin, and we've seen both of them this year.
Both of those
You want
things
it
have
to be,
happened in this.
yeah,
We are 4 games into the season, and both of those things have happened.
yep,
This needs to be a game where he goes to the media after the game and says that my O line lost us the game tonight. Like that's what you're hoping for.
yeah, I hope so. I think the other thing, and this is the thing that I guess we're gonna have to do from until proven otherwise, but UCF special teams, we need them to not do bad things.
Correct.
Colorado's
That
special
correct.
teams also aren't great. They gave up a kickoff, 100-yard kickoff return last week. Their kicker's 3 for 5, including a miss, between 20 and 29 yards. But we talked about this. I don't know if it was post game. We've done like 3 podcasts now since the TCU game, right?
No.
No, wrong. 2. This is the
Yeah.
third one.
This
This
is
is
the
the third
third.
one.
This is the third.
And I don't remember which one it was that we talked about it, but the 3 block kicks I've never seen before in my life. I don't think we're gonna have to go into every game thinking, oh gosh, they're gonna have 3 kicks blocked. But one, like it's not off the table. Like they need to have fixed that. That's a thing they need to have, figured out by now. Whether it's the trajectory of the kick that led to a block or Evan Morris just doing an Olay, whatever it is, they had to have fixed that during the bye week.
It's not even the field goals, which it is the field goals. Let me be clear. It is the field goals, but I can't do another Daniel Levarski situation where UCF scores a touchdown and I'm having to really like edge of my seat for the PAT. Cannot go back to that, especially not in this conference. And I'm not expecting that, but it is one of those things where I'm not, regardless of what the score is in that game, I'm not going to be able to unclench just for what this season is going to be until we've seen Boomer hit a couple PATs, until we've seen him
Mm-hmm.
hit a field goal and those not get blocked. Like we've moved on from, I hope Boomer makes them. Just get the
Yeah.
ball off, get the kick off is where the bar is at right now.
That's a scary spot to be in because like
Yeah.
even the game tying touchdown to Kobe at TCU, like you're like, oh well, now we got to kick the extra point. Like, oh
Yeah.
God.
We
And
were, I mean, we were like crouched on the ground shaking, waiting for him to kick a PAT, like the most like procedural thing in all of
yeah,
football.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, you hope that none of it shows up again. Even
You
like
do.
you hope that the blocks don't show up, but you also hope that he's not missing field goals. Like that kind of stuff. Like I'm still not, not comfortable
I just
still.
him missing the field goals. I'm like, we'll cross that bridge when we get to that. It's like just get the ball in the air and we'll
We'll
see what
cross that
happens.
bridge. Yeah,
Like
we'll cross that bridge when he gets the ball over the defense, or the field goal. Yeah,
if we get to our Colorado post game podcast and we're talking about Boomer missing a kick that he at least like got into the air, success. Like there we go. We'll work on making the kicks next week. It's baby steps.
yeah.
The flip side of that, very quickly on Colorado's special teams being rough, is this the game that Xavier Townsend finally takes one back to the house?
Hope so. Like it's gonna happen, right? Like it's
Yes,
gotta happen at some point.
it's
It
destiny.
has happened before, but there's been flags. I hope that this is the week where we get that electric moment because it always is. Like he's had a couple. Was it the New Hampshire game? I think because a lot of teams TCU is able to just
Yeah,
boot the touchbacks, and I don't think he even had a return. He might have had one. Oh, he did have one because I think I think UCF started the game on the 13-yard line on their
he
first
also
drive.
technically had a return where he waved for a fair catch and then got
Yeah,
leveled by a TCU defender
yeah.
because the refs didn't notice it. So there's that.
That they didn't notice. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. We don't have to go back to that. That was still one of the more bizarre moments of a very bizarre game.
Yes.
But yeah, just seeing him take back, I think he had like a 30 or 40-yard return against New Hampshire. I haven't seen as much of it in the last few games, but if this is one where he breaks one off, like that kind of stuff, you talked about it with the Kansas or not the Kansas State, the TCU SMU game, like that kind of stuff changes the game. It changed the
Yep.
game for a little bit last week when Baylor did it to Colorado. They went up, I think it was like 21-10, 21-7, something like that early on because they got a 100-yard kickoff return. Like that kind of stuff can win you a game. And if Xavier Townsend, I believe, has that ability to do that, this would be a great game for it. Every game would be a great game for it, but this would be probably especially great.
I mean, you just think of a situation where it's, I don't know, midway through the second quarter, UCF's up 10-0, Colorado punts, Townsend returns that, and you're just handing the Colorado the ball back now down 17-0. It's like that's how you just
Yeah.
break a game open is plays like that. So I'm not going to predict that because it's just so hard to do that, but I'm hopeful. I mean, if there was ever a special teams unit that would allow that from Townsend, it would be this one. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna predict that this game will be broken open at any point because
Yeah.
it blows my mind that UCF right now is a 14-point favorite.
The line is crazy, man. I
They
mean, part of that is
opened at
people have
11
to
and a half,
understand that it's
right?
not a, yeah, they open at 11 and a half. It's up past 14 now. People have to understand it's not a prediction. I mean, it's just that's
Yeah.
the way the money's going. It's not, so don't,
I still
overthink
just
that.
the money going that way is crazy to me. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we're sitting here on Saturday, or not here, but sitting on the podcast Saturday talking about wow, like they ended up winning by 15, 16, like
I could see
crazy.
it.
But
That's not an unhinged idea to me that we're having the post game podcast talking about it like a 35-13 win or something. I could see it. I'm just not going to predict it.
yeah, I mean I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be surprised, but I think I'd be surprised. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to protect myself and just going into this and thinking, yeah, this is just going to be 4 hours of me being nervous, and I won't get any reprieve until the end of this game.
Look,
But
this game, the nightmare for this game that absolutely could happen is just Shadur is just finding receivers, and the D line's not getting to him, and the secondary is looking how they looked against TCU. That's not only impossible. That's not a crazy notion that could be
no,
where things are headed.
I think it's probable.
It's
Like,
probable. So
yeah,
and at that point, you just hope that can UCF outscore them, and that's the one thing that I'm sure the fans would love it as far as the casual fans. The last thing I want to deal with Saturday is UCF winning a game or losing a game like 45-38 or something. I don't want that.
yeah,
That's great for you guys, the neutral fans. You're not listening to this podcast, but just people are just tuning into a game. It's not great for
yeah.
the fan bases involved, and I would not appreciate that.
No, I don't want it. But with that said, let's do score predictions.
Let's do
What do
it.
you
You go
got?
first.
Oh, okay. I do have UCF winning. I wouldn't even know. Is this a shootout? 34-28. I don't know
I
if it's
have
really a shootout
I
by
have
college football
31 I
standards.
have 31-24. So
Okay.
we're pretty in line. Praying for rain. That's where
Yeah,
I'm at.
yeah,
Dion's
Dion's
praying,
praying.
just Dion's praying, I'm praying, we're all just praying.
Yeah. Prayer circles, but we're all praying for different things. Yeah, I don't know. I was doing the score prediction again, score predictions every week. I'm like, I don't know, just throw some numbers out there. I don't know if that's enough points for either team,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe UCF's defense really does just get to Shador and they do score 20, 21. But I think they're going to score quite a bit. Just UCF has to outscore them, and I think they will. But I
Yeah.
told you 3 hours ago that I'm convinced that UCF's going to lose. So we'll see what I feel tomorrow, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and then actually Saturday.
You texted me, I'm convinced UCF is going to lose this game. We did not have a conversation. And then maybe what, an
Mm-hmm.
hour later, you texted me,
I think it was 2 hours and 10 minutes later.
you replied, that's very specific. You replied to your own message and just said, I actually think we're going to win now. Like, it's just like, that's the kind of week we're in for.
Yeah, and it's going to be like that probably every week. So
I'm ready to get
fun.
this game over with.
Me too. I'm ready to get next week over with also. I don't even want to think about it yet.
And then
Um,
Cincinnati's gonna be tough. I'm actually just ready to get the season over with. Let's wrap it up.
can't wait till our
It's too
off-season
stressful.
podcast.
This is the
Yeah.
curse, though. This is what we talk about is all off season. I'm sitting here and I'm like, and like to be clear, I'm having the time of my life. I love college football season. I'm having a great time, but it's like all off season. I'm like, God, I just can't wait for it to be football season. I always forget that football season sucks because if they're winning, it's stressful as hell because you're like, when are they going to stop winning? And if they're losing,
Yeah.
it's stressful as hell because you're like, I can't believe they're losing. It's always stressful no matter what. There's no just
And
enjoying it.
the more they win, the more expectations build up, and you're like,
Yes.
wow, this could be. And then they lose, and makes the loss that much worse. So,
Them
yeah, it
going into
really
the
does.
swamp, if
Football
they're
season
4
sucks, is
0,
something you
football
just
season
said.
sucks. It's awful. Hate it.
Yeah.
Them going into the swamp 4 0 is going to have me even more freaked out than I've been this week. Them coming home to play Cincinnati with a shot to start 6 0, if that happens, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. There's no
Oh, it's
relief
bad.
there.
It's bad. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get there. I can't believe it's only Tuesday as we're talking. It's I don't know. We got to get through. We have got to. The hurricane is probably like gonna impact Tampa quite a bit, and I'm just sitting here like, man, Colorado's passing game is crazy.
To be clear, it's gonna like say hey to Tampa. Like it's headed to them anyway,
Yeah,
we
right.
think. It's what they told
But
me about Charlie back in the day. So I don't know. Like, be safe if you're in Florida, wherever you are, because these things can
did I
get
tell you
crazy today.
My Charlie story? I probably have in the past, right?
My Charlie stories that like destroyed my neighborhood, but what's your
My Charlie story
Did you
is
flee to Orlando?
we did, yes. We
Oh
went
man.
to the All-Star Music Resort at Disney. Us, my family, and some family friends. And I remember it as a great time. I was what, 6 years old. So I'm like, this is cool. Like we're in Orlando, we're at a Disney resort. I slept through the hurricane, and I was like, wait, what happened? And then I wrote about it in my like first grade journal. I wrote Hurricane Charlie was fun. And I get made fun of it to this day. I get made fun of it by my parents because I said Hurricane Charlie was fun. Because for me, it was. I didn't know how big of a deal it was.
So let me tell my version of Hurricane Charlie really
Yeah.
quickly, because I hopefully our Floridian listeners will appreciate this. My version of Hurricane Charlie was I was 7 and I was very afraid of it because I this was the first hurricane I was like old enough to be like aware that stuff was happening. And my parents were like, it's no big deal. It's not going to come here. We'll get some rain. It'll be fine. And I was like, but what happens if it comes here? And they're like, if anything happened, we go to the laundry room because it's the one room in our house that doesn't have windows or anything. And I went to
Mhm.
sleep. I wake up in the laundry room and there's all this noise and our dogs are freaking out and we're like we have the laundry room door open a little bit because like to give the dogs some more room and then we start hearing the windows start to break and we start hearing the roof
Mm.
come off and my dad pulls the dogs and we close the door and all that and then I woke up the next day and we went outside and saw our destroyed neighborhood so it was a slightly different
Yeah,
experience.
the slightly different of a 7-year-old versus a 6-year-old, I guess. In that, I don't know if that's what it was or if I just had no concept of hurricanes yet.
And
But
then the funniest part of this, well, none of it's funny, it was actually terrible, was that then I'm sure I've mentioned on the podcast before that my parents were both journalists when I was growing up. They both worked for the
I think
Orlando
so.
Sentinel. So hurricanes, where other people were like, we have to flee the state, for my family, it was like, it's going to be a busy time, like, got to work. And so for Francis, which was a hurricane that came in right after Charlie, like a week later, my parents were like, we got to be close to work. So we'll go to this Marriott down by downtown Orlando. And I'm like, oh, that'll be good. We're in this big building. I'm still freaked out about what just happened with Charlie. I'm like, that'll be great. We woke up to the fire alarm and then being like, everyone get out of your rooms because Francis was ripping one of the walls off the Marriott while we were in there. So it was Florida's fun, man.
Yeah.
We have weird stuff here. I know that the Midwestern Big 12 fans are brag about their tornadoes, but I gotta tell you, hurricanes kind of crazy too.
Yeah, quite a bit. All right, football news.
Can I say one more thing on hurricanes really
Yeah,
quickly
go
as I
ahead.
keep to we've had this conversation with the Iowa State Cyclones. Wild that Miami named their program after these things. Like crazy decision to do that. But go ahead.
Yeah. Some quick football news. UCF Cincinnati is sold out. I think I've lost count of how many sellouts UCF has announced leading into the season. There was already like three or four before we kicked off week
Is this
one, and
it?
now
Is this it?
because BYU
BYU
they said
sold out.
was sold out. Arizona sold out, I believe.
Utah has to
Utah
be.
sold out. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think they've announced sellouts for all of them so far.
it's pretty great.
And this crowd, I mean, this crowd Saturday is going to be crazy. Um, and the other thing, like you mentioned earlier, UCF Florida will kick off on SEC Network at 7:45 next Saturday. So not the national spotlight UCF's getting this week because Florida has been bad this year. But I'm
I
still
cannot
really terrified of that game.
believe that is an SEC Network game. I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that. And I also, I kind of, obviously that's Florida being bad. I wonder how much of that is also a reaction to the number UCF got playing on Fox against TCU, because that was a bad TV number. I don't know. I wonder if the
Yeah.
networks are out on UCF a little bit here. And they're not going to be able to do anything to redeem themselves this weekend, because whatever crazy number they get, people are going to say is because of Colorado.
Trying to see what it's like going up against because like I mean in the SEC the right around that time is Tennessee Arkansas which like it doesn't
That's
feel
nothing. Yeah.
yeah. Clemson Florida State is going to be right around then too.
Florida State's terrible,
But
though.
yeah, Florida State's not good. So like Michigan Washington I guess is the big one at 7:30.
I guess.
But
But even
yeah,
Washington's
for
not really supposed to be anything this year.
yeah, this game ending up on SEC Network was a an upset. I think did I don't know if I predicted it or not. I don't remember well enough, but I feel like way back, maybe we were talking about Florida and maybe in May, I was like, could it be on the SEC network? You're like, there's no way. It's
I
an
remember
SEC
very
network game.
confidently telling you that you would be crazy to think that.
Like
And
ESPN
here
or
we are.
ESPN2 was what we were thinking.
Yeah. Extra crazy
Um,
that I know Florida's been horrible, but they're 2-2. Like they're not like it's not like this is an 0-4, but like I don't know. This is it's interesting. It's
and
interesting.
they'll be going into that game 2-2 because they're off this week.
I mean, the
So
ESPN2 game is Kansas Arizona State. That's what they got beat out
yeah,
by.
yeah. Wow. That
Yeah.
is weird. That is very weird. I wonder if it does have a little bit to do with what you said with UCF's numbers from
For
which
those who don't follow like TV rating stuff, UCF's rating for the TCU game is bad. It was just over 1 million, which is crazy, crazy bad for
which
a
was
Fox game.
what 7:30 on Fox, right?
Yeah. And I think there's a combination of things. They were going up against who were they up against? They were up against a big game.
Were they?
Yeah,
I
they're
don't
oh, it was the
remember.
Georgia Kentucky game that came down to the wire.
Oh,
And also TCU was just killing UCF. So I think that it was a combination of I don't think it had a huge audience to begin with, and I think people tuned out, and then I think there was another game that was more interesting. So yeah, but still bad number.
yeah. Not great.
Nope.
Game of the week. UCF volleyball is starting conference play this week. They're 7-2 so far. They play at number 10 Kansas on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Kansas is 9-1. So that's the Big 12 opener, and hope they can get an upset there. Yeah, tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Tweet of the week is once again this week, not just a single tweet, but more a Twitter event. And for tweet of the
Okay.
week this week, I wanted to just give my respect and appreciation for all of college football Twitter yesterday, which if you're not big into football or if you're not big into things beyond UCF, what yesterday was on Twitter was the Mountain West and Pac-12 and a little bit of the AAC all trying to murder each other. And for the first time in realignment history, usually this stuff is all cloak and dagger and it breaks and you had no idea what's happening. They, in real time, just all went after each other on social media. And the way this started was that if you were paying attention last week, I don't remember if it happened by the time we record our podcast, the Pac-12 tried to get USF, Memphis, Tulane, and UTSA to leave the AAC for the Pac-12. I thought that would happen. I thought it made sense. I thought that was the way things were trending. Yesterday morning, it breaks, all the media folks break that they're not leaving. They then release a unity statement with the AAC, which was great. There's nothing like it's actually funny. We've lived to see the day. I love to just tell a fan in 2020, it's like USF releasing a statement saying, in fact, we're not joining the Pac-12. We're staying in the AAC because we think it's better. Which I have to say, first off, it was so those four got invites. Only USF, Memphis, and Tulane say they're not going. 20 minutes go by, and then UTSA says, okay, fine, we're also not going to go. Then Air Force, who it had all been reported last week that they're leaving for the AAC no matter what happens. It then breaks like an hour later. No, Air Force is going to stay in the Mountain West because the Mountain West offered them more money. Gonzaga then joined the Pac-12 and unjoined the Pac-12 in about an hour. It was reported they were joining by Brett McMurphy, who doesn't get stuff wrong. And then everyone else came out and was like, actually, no, they're not joining. UNLV then also announced with Air Force they were not joining the Mountain West. Or they were not joining the Pac-12, excuse me, and they're staying in the Mountain West. So then it's like, okay, I guess the Mountain West is just going to win this thing. The Pac-12 is going to die. Then Utah State later in the day actually, we just got invited an hour ago to the Pac-12 and we've decided to take it. And the night ended with both UNLV and Air Force going, well, we didn't know Utah State was going to take the invite. Maybe we want to now. And that's what we're waiting to see now is those two programs are still now talking about, well, now that Utah State's going to Pac-12, maybe we should too. So
Which
go ahead.
they're going to two set like they UNLV would be going to the Pac-12, Air Force would be going to the AAC, right?
Yes, there. That was the other thing that
Yeah.
Dellinger reported is UNLV and Air Force are working together on their decision, even though they're planning to go to different conferences if they decide to leave. This is just. I have to point out all this fighting between the Mountain West and the Pac-12 and millions upon millions of dollars in exit fees going back and forth. The Pac-12 sued the Mountain West today. That was the other thing that happened after this. Is for like the same teams. It's not like these are two conferences. The Pac-12 and Mountain West are the same thing right now because there are no more
Yeah.
Pac-12 teams. They're just fighting over who's going to be where. I would strongly encourage all conferences for the rest of time to do realignment this way. How fun would it have been in 2021, instead of just the Houston Chronicle breaking that Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC, if instead a month before that it had been like Texas A&M is on Twitter like, we don't want you in the SEC, and Texas is like, well, we want to go anyway. That would have been so much more fun. Let's just do this from
Yeah.
now on.
It's a lot. My head was spinning yesterday, and then hearing you recap all of it just now, my head's spinning again.
It's only
So
like 5 hours, man. It was a lot of
yeah,
stuff happened. But
and your
congrats to
head spinning is not good if you have a head cold.
this is
I will
true.
say,
This is true.
yeah,
Regular colds, it's okay, but head colds, it's a problem.
head colds. You don't want it to spin. Um, yeah, it's a lot. That is a lot went on.
Yeah.
And a lot will go on Saturday. At the end of the day on Saturday, I do this now. Like whenever we have, I know we're gonna have a podcast to do after a game. It's like that's gonna either be such a jubilant podcast or we're gonna just be really upset.
We haven't had to do one for a loss in some time. So
Yeah, since after the Gasparilla Bowl.
yeah, which was so fun.
Yeah, which was I guess what 4 games ago, but 9 months ago. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a good one. We'll see. We'll be back on Saturday night with episode 229. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at Bailey J Adams 22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us. We will talk to you on Saturday.
Bye, everybody.